Now, as the saying goes, I've saved the best for last. And I'm referring to the Symmetrical Tonic Neck Reflex, otherwise known as the crawling reflex. And the reason why I say I've saved this one for last is because this test in itself is quite unique, and this reflex is quite unique in the sense that it is one that appears after about a few months that the child is alive, about 4 to 6 months of age, and then it should be integrated, or it should disappear by about 8 to 12 months of age. So this reflex is very unique in the sense that it's not present at birth and it doesn't disappear after a few months. It actually only appears after about 4 months and should disappear by about a year. And what is that? That's the time period during which a child is actually starting to learn to flip over, to sit up, especially if they're on their stomach, to be able to lift themselves up and to be able to start crawling and propelling themselves forward using their eyes depending on where it is that they want to go. So that's why this test and this reflex is very unique in the sense that it involves the flexion of the head and neck. It involves the coordinated movement of the upper body in relation to the lower body. And the test is actually going to be positioned in 2 different ways depending on the position of the head and neck. So we're going to do this test on a child assuming that they are, let's say, about 6 months of age. So we're within that window of opportunity to 4 to 6 months and 8 to 12 months when the reflex should be present. And we're going to be looking for different movements and coordinated movements of the upper limbs versus the lower limbs depending on how the head is positioned. So let me show you what I mean. If we take our child and if we position them in a way as if they were getting ready to crawl, what does a child do when they're first learning how to crawl? Is they're lying on their stomach and they look up. So they're at an age about 6 months, 4 to 6 months of age, where they're able to lift their head and flex their neck. And then they see the world in front of them and they want to get somewhere. So then they actually use their upper limbs and their arms to lift themselves to be able to get up. But then they want to be able to propel themselves forward and get somewhere. So this is when the lower limbs and the knees bend so that the child can start crawling with their legs. So this is what I mean when I say we've got coordination of the head, the upper limbs, and the lower limbs. Remember, we're thinking like osteopaths. So when we do this test, if the child, as I'm demonstrating for you now, if you lift them up and if their head goes into extension, then the arms will extend and the legs will contract. And the child will be in the position like we can see in the handout that I've sent you, preparing himself in order to be able to crawl. So if we do a test on the child when this reflex should be present, this is what should happen when we lift them up and they're able to see forward. They should be able to extend their arms and they should be able to contract their legs. Now, very often this is a test that you might actually let the child just do spontaneously. If you say to the mother, let's put the child on the floor and let's let him crawl around and see what he does. If you have a child who is beyond a year of age and he's actually not crawling and not getting up, then we know that that primitive reflex is retained. So this is a test that you might not necessarily do over a bed, holding the child like you would in a test of a child who's, let's say, 3 months of age. This is a little bit later, and this is related to crawling. So you might want to position the child on their stomach in a way where they might want to get up, and often a healthy child during this time period, when you position them this way, what they're going to do is they're going to push up with their upper arms and they're going to start trying to move their legs. Oftentimes a mother will complain, as I mentioned before, that if she tries to lie on her stomach and gets the baby to lie on her when she's breastfeeding or if she's in any kind of a semi-recumbent position, the child might start automatically eliciting signs of this reflex, the crawling reflex. The mother sometimes interprets that as if the child is pushing her away because he's actually extending his arms and he's starting to kind of pedal with his legs. So she thinks that he's actually stepping on her and pushing away from her. So here's an example of a reflex that during a certain developmental period, it's normal and healthy that it should be present. It's not a sign that the child is rejecting the mother when she's trying to hold him in this position against her chest. Understand? So another way to do this test is to turn them onto their back, and once again we're going to support the thoracic spine and the neck and head. I like to do it in this way, and we're going to flex the neck in the other direction. So now we're flexing it, and what happens in this case is the opposite, is that the arms should flex and contract and the legs will extend. So when we have a head that is flexed forward, the upper limbs contract, the legs extend, but when we turn them in a position ready to crawl and they lift their head, or you lift their head, they should extend their arms and contract their legs, getting ready to crawling. So this is our symmetrical tonic neck reflex. It shows up about 4 to 6 months of age, just around the time that the child is getting ready to be able to lift up and interact with the world and hold themselves up. Strength and contraction of the muscles of the spine, and the use of arms and legs. So as we discussed in other chapters, this particular test and the coordination of the head, upper limbs, and lower limbs, and use of the muscles of the back and spine are really going to inform your osteopathic practice in understanding whether or not the child is developmentally on cue at the right time and doing what they should be doing. So that ends our primitive reflex testing demonstration. I hope you were able to use the chart and keep it handy, and that you'll use it in your clinic so that you'll be able to refer to it. Remember that you have access to this course material and these videos for 1 full year from the time that you enroll. So even in 6 months or 8 months or 10 months from now, if you have a newborn that comes in, mother's talking about things that make you think, oh, what about, those primitive reflexes that Maureen was talking about in the course that I took? Let me go back and let me watch some of those videos again, because she's going to be coming in a couple of days, and I think I'd like to do some testing. So you can go back and you can watch these videos as many times as you want, and hopefully you'll use the practice chart that I've given you. With the images there will give you a more concrete idea of what it looks like in a newborn, and hopefully this will help to inform and enrich your assessment and the assessment of a child in its developmental milestones. In pediatrics, whether you're an osteopath or whether you're a manual practitioner, an occupational therapist, or a massage therapist who does infant massage, I think you'll find that everything that you learned in this course and these videos will be useful for you. So I'm wishing you best of luck, and of course if you have any questions or concerns, you can always write to us at ceosteopathy@gmail.com. I'm Maureen Maher, Instructor and Educational Director from the Center for Continuing Education of Osteopathy, signing off and wishing you very much success in everything you do, but specifically in your osteopathic practice.